Welcome back to the LivingFit Show. This episode is another Bells and Beverages with Mike and Jordan. And Mike, what do you have in the glass today?
So, Jordan, at the moment, I've actually got a heavy glass full of ice water. I am live at the All-American Kettlebell Open, which is here at the Mr. America in Atlantic City. You can see the platforms behind me right here. And we've been loading in kettlebells, building platforms, and setting up a competition pretty much since 9 o'clock this morning. I'm surrounded by every lifter whose name you'd recognize right now. We got weigh-ins going in the corner. So, no, actually, I'm just hydrating at the moment and hoping to at some point get into an ice bath later this evening.
There you go. Well, that's a good example to set so people know that we're not always drinking. In fact, when we have to make responsible choices, we will make responsible choices. So
exactly.
We try to do that. Well, I do not have a competition to run, so I'm drinking some lovely Smoke Wagon uncut, unfiltered. So I got a nice little just 1 ounce pour, but it's 5 o'clock on a Friday, so I feel like that's okay, right? It's happy hour. It's always happy hour when Mike and Jordan are talking kettlebells.
Of course. I mean, it's like, I mean, really, dude.
So when do bells go up? When's the first flight?
So judges meet at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. First flight starts at 11, and then we'll run till I think about 3 o'clock tomorrow. And then on Sunday we'll throw about another. There's about 60 or 70 lifters that are registered here. So right now I'm looking over. I got Audrey Bergio from IKLF over in the corner there. I got Nikolai Puchlov from Pro Kettlebell. I'm looking at. Dawnika's over there. Dana Zorns from Raised Bells is here. Kimberly Fox just stuck her head through a few minutes ago. And then let's see, Judy DeMuro came through a couple of minutes ago. I mean, it's like the whole gang's here, man.
Nice. Is Dennis Vasilev there as well?
He is. You just missed him. He's been with us all day. Basically, very, very motivated by that pole right there because that's where his camera is going to be. So he was very precise about where his camera was going to be. Dennis cared very much about his pole.
All right. Well, I know a lot of people care very much about Dennis's poll, so we'll just leave that there. But
we're going to leave that for his wife.
Yes, and his new child. Congrats to Dennis, actually, by the way, for bringing a new kettlebell world champion into the fray, because I have a feeling that's going to be that child's destiny. But this episode was going to be all about Kettlebell Sport, pretty much, because
fantastic.
You've got a competition that you just ran a couple of weeks ago. You're
at a
competition that's running tomorrow. I also
and you've got one next week.
That comes next week, yeah. So it is like competition season for Kettlebell Sport right now. So
indeed, it is lively.
For our newly uninitiated listeners, WTF is Kettlebell Sport. So let's dive. What is Kettlebell Sport? what are we doing, and what is a competition actually about when we do Kettlebell Sport?
Yeah, so I guess the simplest explanation is Kettlebell Sport is the reason we don't leave Russians to create sports unsupervised. Because they come up with this shit. But what you're largely looking at is 3 lifts, right? So double clean and jerk, which is known as long cycle, single-handed snatch, and then double jerk. Now, where it gets fun, you're like, oh, yeah, cool. I can do a snatch. I can do a jerk. I can do a clean and jerk. Not a problem whatsoever. Where it gets a whole lot more interesting is when you don't have the ability to put your kettlebells down for a minimum of 5 minutes and a full comp set of 10 minutes. And when I say don't put them down, I was like, I'm not joking. Like, this is your happy resting place. But if you're snatching, oh yeah, by the way, it's up here. So again, why we don't let Russians create sports unsupervised in any possible way.
Yeah, it certainly gets a lot more challenging when you don't have the ability to put the bells out of your hand. What if you put the bells down? What happens?
So when you put the bells down, that's pretty much the end of the party. You'll go ahead, if you set them down, however many reps you lifted, that was your score. The only exception to that is there is one federation called Bolt that does allow you to set the bells down or change your hands. But that's unique. That's the only one out there. But in general, once the bell comes off the platform, that's your girlfriend for the next 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's quite the party. And then are you guys doing half marathon or marathon sets there as well? Because we
Yeah.
specified 10 minutes. That's kind of the standard. The Russian standard is 10 minutes. But there's
Duh.
also well, it actually started, didn't it start? It was just who could lift the most reps without putting the bells down. Again,
And
don't
not
leave
dying.
Russians on. Yeah, don't leave Russians on. I think a few people did die, so then they're like, oh, we should probably put a time limit on this. And so then it became, do it for 10 minutes. But
Exactly.
now there are people that decided they want to do 30 minutes,
More.
60 minutes, 2 hours. I know David Keown did a what they call an ultra marathon, which is a 2-hour set with 2 16-kilo kettlebells and set a world record for that. It might have been an uncontested world record because I don't know who the hell else does 2 hours.
Okay, this guy's also the same guy who goes out in the middle of the wilderness and says that boulder looks like fun and picks it up just because it was there, right? So I mean, let's not consider this to be the norm in the sport, right?
Yeah, we're talking about the extremes, but those do exist, right? There's ultra marathon, marathon, half marathon, standard 10-minute, and then 5 minutes. How many?
Right, when you just need to have hamburgers with you all the time, you make them into your hands, right?
How many events do most people? We'll just say most people. What do most people sign up for? What events do most people sign up for?
So the higher the higher end lifters, the more experienced lifters, are typically going to segment as either biathlon people or long cyclers, and you're typically dealing with larger bells, right? So you're looking at 20s and 24s for the women, 28s, 32s for the men, 24s at the lower end for the men, but most of the rookie lifters, which is really where we're seeing the groundswell right now in the sport, they are typically a lot of them are doing single lift, either just snatch or long cycle single lifts. A 5-minute lift with 8-kilo bells and 16-kilo bells, right? So we're seeing a lot more of that, and it's kind of great because it means that there's growth. But typically people will break out as either biathlon athletes or long cyclers. Some folks will do triathlon. It's not as common. It's not uncommon, but it's not as right. You have to be a little nuts, like
I raised
Jordan.
my hand.
Right. So I'm primarily a long cycler, but I'll do snatch sets from time to time. My shoulders don't take jerk very nicely, so the cleans actually give them a break. But again, like I said, the beginning lifters, more often than not, I'm seeing them doing single lifts. I mean, typically either snatch or long cycle. For whatever reason, nobody wants to just be just a jerk specialist. I mean, because jerks suck. But
my favorite lift. Right? This is where I'm really the weirdo because jerk is my favorite lift. Although
what the hell is wrong with you? What the hell is wrong with you?
Clearly, I have suffered a lot, and there's trauma in my life that I'm trying to get through by exposing myself to more trauma.
Where did the bad man touch you? Who hurt you? Who hurt you? Where did the bad man touch you?
Yeah, I don't know. Something's deeply wrong with me, I think. But biathlon is jerk and snatch combined for a score.
Yep.
And you get 1 point per jerk and half a point per long side per snatch per snatch. Right.
Yeah. Now, if you do, and that comes into and this is where you start seeing people all go beautiful mind, right? And the square root of the hypotenuse on a turtle. So one of the things that confuses the hell out of people when they first get into the sport is that it is not scored the way that you're used to football or hockey, where it's you run across a line and you get 1 point, or you throw it in the basket and it's 2 points. There's a little bit of math that goes on with it, right? Because it's basically, if you took the MOAS, right, the mother of all spreadsheets, they would call that a scoring table, and down one angle you're going to have the weight of the kettlebell, and down the other axis you're going to have the weight of the lifter, and then there's in each box it was okay, so if you want to be a certain rank, you need to lift a certain number of reps of this bell. And it gets confusing as shit, but at the end of the day, once you get used to reading them, they're really pretty straightforward. And so what you're going to largely deal with when you're looking at these is when you're dealing with a biathlon or triathlon, they have their own table that goes along with it. And again, they're confusing when people first start doing it, but it starts to make sense over time. It's not that difficult. Some places have some strange ways of calculating scores, but that's about the most common, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's typically, the way the logic makes sense to me, right, is The snatch is worth half a point because it's only one bell. The other two lifts both require double bells. For if you're doing triathlon, it requires that you use both bells. And since long cycle is the one that you move the two bells the furthest, since you have to swing them between your legs or outside your body, I guess, but you have to swing them, clean them to the rack, and then press them overhead. You do less total repetitions, but you've moved them the furthest, so the biggest amplitude. So you get 1.5 points per every rep that you complete. Jerk is just lift them overhead, let them fall back onto your body, absorb the force, and stay there as long as you can take it. And you go up and down, and you get 1 point per move. But the snatch, since you do, ideally 200 plus in snatch, you get half a point for each one of those, right? So that's kind of how it breaks out when you're doing all three of them.
Absolutely.
And you combine that for a score. So your triathlon score then is it gives you more points for the long cycle. It gives you fewer points for snatch, but you get more reps. So there's a lot of strategy that starts coming into it when you're, especially when you start getting into triathlon, and with triathlon or biathlon, you have to do it on the same day, and you only get a certain amount of rest between each set. That's the other thing that's really
it's usually like 30 to 60 minutes of rest, and then it's like, and here we go again.
Yeah, when you're doing it live in person, you're basically like, okay, I just finished my my long cycle set. Now I'm going to consume gummy bears as quickly as possible so that I can get back on the platform for my next set, and then I'm going to repeat until you cannot lift your arms anymore. Sugar-free
Haribo gummy bears. I strongly recommend these between sets, and then go do squats.
Why sugar-free? No way, man. Don't come at me with that Haribo BS. Albany's 12 flavor gummy bears are the best. I will.
Oh, you don't know about the sugar-free Haribo gummy bears? You know what the sweetener is, right?
Olestra. I don't know what it is.
Sorbitol.
Oh. No.
Yeah. So if you eat a whole bunch of those things and then go, I don't know, do back squats in your powerlifting practice, let's just say it's going to be a very, very ugly evening.
Yeah. Don't tell people to.
Don't try this at home, kids. Don't try this at home, kids.
They don't know that you're kidding.
Right now. Wait, I'm sorry. I'm getting a text from LivingFit Legal that says, "Shut the hell up, Mike. You're going to get a suit." Okay, got it. Noted, guys. We're good. All right, cool, Tommy. I wouldn't do that to you, buddy.
So, all right. So that's kind of the overview of kettlebell sport. And if you want to learn more about it, there's resources. You can go to my website. I've got a section called WTF is Kettlebell Sport. There's some beginner guides out there. You can check out LivingFit, has some content on it as well. I don't recommend going down the YouTube rabbit hole necessarily, but there are resources. But as far as the physiological adaptations that you're going to get from kettlebell sport, what do you think the most important aspects that make a successful kettlebell sport lifter?
So at its core, you're really dealing with a muscular endurance thing with a heavy cardio component to it, right? So when you start talking about these 5 and 10 minute long sets and you're not putting that thing down, that's really kind of straight up endurance lifting at that point. You need to have the base muscle to do it, but if you're coming into it going, oh man, it's like that's only a 24 kilo bell. That's only, 53 pounds, man. That's not that big. I was like, yeah, cool. But you're going to do like 200 reps with it. And people look at you and they go, wait, what? And I was like, yeah. So, you really have to sort of shift. Like if you're largely looking at it as a straight lift big shit a few times kind of a sport, you're probably going to be horribly, horribly disappointed. It's not going to go well for you.
I can tell you from experience.
Yeah, so I mean, it's like you start seeing the champion kettlebell lifters, and they look like soccer players, to be honest. They tend to be built like soccer players, the really high end lifters. So as I'm sitting here at Mr. America, right, and watching some of the biggest humans I've ever seen in my life, right. We've got the strongman guys right over there, and I'm pretty sure these guys got bored and lifted a car just because it was there, and we got the CrossFitters over in the next thing, and it's like, I see like, at least 20 rowers and assault bikes. I mean, it's like, those guys are going to be, the CrossFitters are going to smoke the strongmen when it comes to this sport. It's the simplest way I can put it. It's very much an endurance type of thing. It's very much controlling how snappy you are and when. You can't be full tension all the time. Do not tighten your column, comrade. So you're going to have a very bad day if you try to go ham on kettlebell sport out the chute. It's just not going to work well. You actually do better when you relax a bit more.
Yeah, we're talking least mode, not beast mode. Again, as our buddy David Cohen would say, we're going for the least amount of energy necessary to move the bells to the required positions. Right. So it's all about
Exactly.
movement efficiency.
Exactly. It's a straight up endurance and efficiency game. So if you're just trying to go bananas, you're probably going to be pretty unhappy with your results. And if you get past about 75 seconds, my tip of the hat to you if you're going like that, because most people smoke out in under a minute and a half when they start going bananas. So most people just can't do it. It's a bad day.
So thinking about it, we've got the cardiorespiratory requirement, we've got the strength requirement, but then there's also a lot of like mobility requirements as well.
Oh God,
so
yeah.
How do you go about thinking about the complementary components of programming for kettlebell sport? Like what are the complementary pieces that need to be part of a holistic program?
Yeah. So one thing you tend to run into a lot, and I tend to see in a lot of the newer lifters, is their answer to, if I want to do better at kettlebell sport, just do more kettlebell sport movement, and that's really just not going to get you all the way there. And for some people it can, but you start running into like pattern overload problems. You start just plateauing out pretty badly. I actually find that both CrossFit and powerlifting actually really, really complement kettlebell sport lifting very nicely. The other thing is kettlebell sport, and I know there's a lot of folks that are fairly dogmatic in the kettlebell world that say kettlebell's all you need. It will work everything. It will do everything perfectly. But there are, in fact, phases of movements that the kettlebell is really not my preferred appliance for. And so I tend to counter program those a bit, right? So you ever try and do a lat pull with a kettlebell? It's just sorry, it's just not going to work, right? I mean, and while the lats are really good stabilizers, adding in things like deliberate lat work using cables or something like a moto row with a band and a low cable or a conventional lat pull is going to do great. Supinated grip, bent over rows with dumbbells or kettlebells over a bench is fine. So you really need to be working complementary to some of those muscle groups. The other thing is like kettlebells do jack for your chest, right? They're terrible for your pecs. You're not getting pecs doing kettlebells. You're just not. The muscles in motion just don't get you there. So I absolutely do a good bit of dumbbell bench work, and I prefer the dumbbell over the barbell just from the angle of it's the independent arm movement, which is actually going to be more similar to the sport side. But I love a good dumbbell chest fly as a complementary movement that goes with it. Absolutely love it. I absolutely love deadlifts for kettlebells because there is an awful lot of those same hip extensions that go in there. I like them quite a bit. Sport lifting has a fairly good amount of plyometric hamstring already built into it, but other than in certain people's style, the quads are a little bit neglected from time to time. So good box step-ups work very nicely for that. Walking lunges, racked lunges I adore because they get your oblique subsystem.
I will say, what's really great for quad activation? Jerk. So go do your jerks and you'll get plenty of quad.
Can you see the hand motion? Can you see the finger gesture that I am leaving you right now, you and your jerks?
Read between the lines, bro.
How's your braille?
Anyways, I digressed.
That would never happen. But yeah, so definitely a lot of that. One thing that's kind of nice is like because of the cleans, if you're a long cycler, biceps are free with purchase, right? So I mean, it's like you don't really have to do a lot on that. I do find a little bit of tricep work helps fairly nicely. So some strict pressing is nice. Tricep overheads are really great with kettlebell work. Kettlebell snatches are fairly semi-rotational. If you actually take a look at a really well-done sport snatch, it's a semi-rotational movement. So you do tend to get some fairly nice obliques out of that, but it's never a bad idea to work sort of the backside of the oblique because folks will tend to, as they get tired and their form starts to disintegrate, they're going to tend to hitch their back a little bit more in movements. So really focusing on the erectors works very nicely. Quadratus works very nicely. So again, back to like part of the reason I like deadlifts. I like RDLs. Barbell RDLs are phenomenal. Really nice complementary movement for it. Rowing of all things. getting on the rower, right? And like, I'm going to hate this, but yes, a little bit of cardio won't kill you.
I'll say
as
it's actually probably pretty critical. If you're going to be good at this sport, you got to do some adjunct cardio. And no, lifting weights faster is not cardio. I'm sorry, they are different adaptations.
Shut your heathen mouth, you blaspheming son of a bitch.
Within reason, there is a reason that you get a lot of cardiorespiratory adaptation in kettlebell sport, and it's because it's sub-maximal load done over long periods of time, so you will get a lot of cardiorespiratory benefit. But you will also go from zone 1 to zone 2 to zone 3 almost as quickly as I said that, right? When you pick up 2 bells. So
if you want to find your cardio. Yeah, if you want to find your cardio and you want to have a relationship with God, go ahead and pick up a pair of 24s and start doing jerks. Again, once you get about 75, maybe 90 seconds in, most people start to have a religious experience. About 2 minutes after that, I start getting hate texts of, you son of a bitch, what have you done to me? And then I tell them I'll see them next Tuesday. So it usually does work on pretty well. Oh!
What's up, Nikolai?
I got Nikolai, I got Dana. Like I said, we are really absolutely here, and don't mind us. We are totally recording this, so we are absolutely positively going to put these two jackasses on the LivingFit Show. So it's going to be phenomenal. You guys are now more famous-er. That's a word, right? More famous-er, right? Yeah, absolutely. So what else we got on the agenda tonight, Jordan?
Oh, well, you mentioned CrossFit, and there's like you said, I think a dozen rowers and a dozen assault bikes and all of that stuff. And you mentioned how CrossFit is actually, you think, a very good complement for kettlebell sport. So let's give the CrossFitters their due and talk a little bit about why do we think that why is it that we think that CrossFit and kettlebell are actually complementary to each other, despite the fact that some people think that they're like enemies.
Yeah, that couldn't be further from the truth, to be quite honest, right? So my studio lives within Tough Temple CrossFit, right? So I have one of the studios in a CrossFit. And several of my lifters are CrossFitters that came in and dipped their toe in the kettlebell sport world and said, wow, this is actually cool, and it complements very nicely. Handful of things that you're going to look at where you really have that nice crossover between kettlebell sport and CrossFit. The first one is CrossFit is very heavy on the Olympic lifting side. In fact, I'll give them props where props are due. They effectively brought Olympic lifting back to America. Flat out. I mean, the resurgence of Olympic weightlifting that you saw in the U.S., I 100% credit back to CrossFit. They did a phenomenal job with it. And so the combination of understanding bar float and elbow dynamics and things like that really, really, really goes very nicely with kettlebell sport. It's a really portable thing. Now, there's obviously technical differences, but understanding pauses and hip extension and where to apply relaxation, where to drive, where to focus on your mobility to get under a weight, while the specific movements between kettlebell and a bar are going to be different, they're super transportable. The CrossFitters tend to pick that up really fast. The other thing is CrossFit has had a conventional kettlebell program since its inception. Right? So Martone had that thing in there very early in the days of CrossFit. So it's not a foreign appliance to a CrossFitter, right? They understand what a kettlebell is. They're not freaked out by it. CrossFitters are fairly proud of the fact that they're a little bit good at just about anything, right? So they tend to be, they pride themselves on their adaptability, their ability to sort of like, whatever, throw it at me, I can do it, right?
I don't know what you're going to ask me to do, but I can take it.
Right. And so some of that mindset actually really does very well with kettlebell sport, because there is a mental toughness that comes out of the CrossFit community that I kind of admire. They do a nice job of that. So you throw them a sport movement and you watch them get a little perplexed when they first do it the first few times, and then it clicks after a few reps because they tend to get very body aware. Like CrossFit's pretty big on body awareness. The gymnastics component is huge on that. And they tend to get really good. The other thing that you will find is their cardio is generally pretty solid. CrossFit is a really cardio intensive, so they generally have fairly decent base cardio if they've been doing CrossFit for a while, and their base strength is usually not bad. I mean, sure, you're going to get some of the folks that are going to be like, scaled for life type type of CrossFitters. But even those folks, they just go down a bell size and they tend to adapt really fast. So it does complement nicely. A couple of the other things that CrossFit will like sort of bring to the sport athlete, or even just the fitness kettlebell lifter that's different, is that gymnastics component really gives them some phenomenal shoulder and core stability. And that combination is just, it works great with kettlebells. Just the dynamic weight loading and the ability for them to just sort of like stabilize in oddball positions does really well for them. The other thing is CrossFit really prides itself on being constantly varied and very high intensity, max intensity. So you don't usually scare them off when you tell them to go berserk. They're usually like, okay, bro, let's do it. You know, and
the harder part is getting them to slow down and understand pacing a little bit, because it's like, no, you don't get to put the weight down. You don't get to just drop
it's 0 or 100. Yeah, it's like they're it's a binary switch, man.
That part is challenging. I will say on the gymnastics thing, another piece that I think is really important about that is, because of the gymnastics component, anybody that's done a ring muscle up understands the value of momentum, and they get the principle of applying momentum to reduce work output, which is a really important principle in kettlebell sport. So they understand that fundamental principle really well.
Yeah, they tend to also be really good at sort of activating and deactivating that mind-body connection, about basically saying, fire this muscle now. The CrossFitters tend to do a really nice job of that. Where I have had challenges with my CrossFitters, okay, because we've all had challenges and everybody likes to kick CrossFit, and there's plenty that they've done that you just look at and you just go, bruh. You know, it's like, you know, see, I am bilingual. I can speak CrossFit, bruh, no rep.
Do they do no rep in CrossFit?
100%. But right. But this is exactly where I was kind of going, right? So the problem that you get is they are very big on mastering specifically simple movements done flawlessly, right? So if you ask a CrossFitter to do a barbell deadlift, it's usually going to be gorgeous. You ask a CrossFitter to do a strict bar overhead press, it's usually going to look great. You ask them to do a back squat, it's going to usually look fantastic, right? But then you ask them to do like, hey man, do 100 burpees for time. And you're like, what in the hell am I observing? So they call it cycling reps, right? And it'd be like, you'll go to a throwdown and you'll see them doing things like barbell clean and jerks. And you'll sit there and they'll be going, it's like, as many reps as possible in 2 minutes. And you'll look at it and somebody will be like, yeah, I got them for 61. And I'll go, it's like 0. No reps were done. Not a single one of those was worth a damn. Those were horrendous. Not a lockout occurred. And so on the sports side, we tend to be really focused on getting those joint angles right, getting those lockouts tight, getting in, fixating at just the right angles, right? And we will no count somebody or warn them from the platform, be like, you're getting real close on that shoulder. watch it. The CrossFitters are like, yeah, bro, do another. And I'll be like, whoa. So that's the biggest challenge that I tend to find, like when I have my CrossFitters that sort of come in, is like the sort of the movement quality versus movement speed tends to go to shit sometimes. And it's not because they don't want to do it. It's just like, it's so ingrained in them, they have to go ham.
Yeah.
And so dialing it is like,
when you're doing it in practice over and over and over, like they've been doing it in practice with nobody judging their reps. Like especially people that are just doing it for fitness. Like they don't have somebody there judging their reps. Like when you go step on the platform for a kettlebell sport competition, there's literally somebody watching every single rep going, is your kney extended?
Yes,
is your elbow
I am actually sitting. I am actually sitting at a judge's table right now. Yeah. There's a dude sitting 5 feet from you yelling at you.
Yeah, I have a question for you. And did you see the CrossFit Games this year?
I did. They brought back the alpaca.
Exactly. So I want you to settle a debate. So I got into a little bit of an online debate. Don't argue with people on the internet, folks. It's never worth it. You never win. Nobody wins. But I want you to help me settle a debate here. So my position on the alpaca was that because they are allowed to shoulder rack, the way that a lot of the lifters were doing the long cycle reps required was actually fairly efficient for them. because they're CrossFit lifters, and because they're used to racking the barbell on their shoulder, and because they're allowed to do that, it does connect them to the load. So whereas those would be no reps in kettlebell sport, I actually felt that the way that some of the people were doing it was actually fairly efficient for the requirements of the event, but and it shortened the amplitude on the portion that's the hardest for non-trained athletes, which is the jerk portion, right? Like you can clean the bells a lot higher because they're used to that. The jerk portion is the harder part for people that are untrained. So my contention was that they were actually doing it fairly efficiently for them as people who were not trained specifically in that movement. But of course, I was arguing with a kettlebell sport purist who was saying, no, they need to connect their elbows to their hips and they'll really get their leg drive and translate that. And I was like, yeah, that's true if it was kettlebell sport, but it wasn't kettlebell sport. It was CrossFit alpaca, and they could shoulder rack.
Yeah, so it was funny, right? So the first time they did that, I guess it was about 3 years ago, 4 years ago at the Open that they did the alpaca, and the kettlebell sport community literally sat around and just had a communal groan watching, and watching the comments threads were definitely a popcorn moment, right?
Yeah, eating our popcorn.
Right. And I'm watching kettlebell sport people watch them lose bits of their soul.
I was just excited to see it on TV. I was like, oh, look, it's Lockcycle on TV.
Right, exactly. So what's funny is so I trained about a half a dozen of the coaches in my CrossFit as LivingFit instructors. And as you know, LivingFit incorporates sport, fitness, lifting, and as well as general mobility and stuff into our programs. And so we try to be sort of anti-dogmatic, just within the LivingFit system. We try to be very deliberately anti-dogmatic. And so I trained all these guys up and brought them up to LivingFit level 2. And then they watched the alpaca this year, and the text messages I was getting of, oh my God, now I get it. And what they were arguing, and so their whole thing came down to, it wasn't necessarily a matter of it didn't match dogma or it wasn't a regulation sport lift. Their thing is if you just racked right here, it's actually, if they learned how to rack properly and then launch, they'd actually be more efficient than just not learning it and trying to treat it like, two small barbells. And so the CrossFitters actually started to get a little bit of a groan as they sort of opened up their horizons on it. And so I think that the answer isn't have internet arguments with folks. I think it's a matter of come try it. It's come on over, let me spend 10 minutes with you and give you a quick rundown. CrossFitters learn kettlebell sport movements obnoxiously fast. And so get them into the point where you're engaged with them and you're not basically just going, oh, you're doing it wrong, F you, bro. I mean, there's enough of that crap in fitness already, and there's certainly enough of it in the kettlebell world of, but that movement is wrong, bro. I mean, comrade. And so, all you're doing is just creating antibodies in that community. But at the end of the day, most of the CrossFitters, that rack position is the only thing they really jack up. I mean, that's the only thing that really gets screwed up in it. So once they get that done, they usually jam up pretty well, and they actually work pretty nicely with it. I like IKFF's system. Steve he's actually here. Steve Cotter's actually here this weekend. But Steve actually brings sport into his program the same way LivingFit does. So, I mean, there are folks that are starting to realize that, the whole notion of style is kind of bullshit. And that applies within the CrossFit community as well. So when you sort of open up the world to them a little bit, they tend to be a lot more receptive because it really starts to kick in. And once it clicks, man, they catch the bug quick. It's pretty fun.
Nice. I just had this vision of you singing Aladdin to CrossFitters while they discover a whole new world. But that's
yeah. So it's usually that or the anthem of the Sea Witch. So I will go full Little Mermaid with my lifters have started to refer to kettlebells as Dinglehoffers, so we're good.
That is perfect. Well, Mike, I really appreciate it. I feel like that was a few minutes well spent. You could have saved time just by saying that I was right, and we could have moved forward. But you gave the appropriately nuanced answer. But I really just wanted validation.
Dude. Hey, remember, bro, smash that like button, click follow, and share this with your buddies. It's for the goddamn follows, Jordan. Just go with it, man.
Well, that's why
if I'm not getting
people in the comments.
Right, if I'm not getting the likes and I'm not getting the lols and at least 3 death threats, a hate comment, and something transphobic in all of our threads, I'm just lost, man. If we didn't have vitriol on the internet, then goddamn it, where would America be?
Who knows? We'd probably be speaking Russian right now.
Duh. I mean, what?
Duh. Huh? All right, man. Well, you've got a competition to go help get ready to roll. So thank you for the time. And we will catch everyone on the LivingFit Show next time. See y'all soon.
Yeah, absolutely.